How in the world can you go from high school dropout to having a PhD and being a successful entrepreneur? Well, that's the story of today's guest, Rob Garcia. Rob's an Air Force vet who still serves in the reserves, and he is the founder and CEO of Shift Advanced Life Design magazine, interviewing high performers from the top teams in the military to the top businesses in the country. Rob talks us through his unorthodox journey to entrepreneurship and what the catalyst was that led him to realize his potential. Otis, Rob, and I explore how Rob learned to be successful and what those lessons are that new entrepreneurs need to understand. What is a poverty business model and what can you do to change it? Why do you need to spend some time preparing for when Joe Moneybags calls? And how can you cure your imposter syndrome? Rob, Otis, and I dive into all this and much more in this great episode. Quick reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. You can also find the full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And if you learned something from Rob, Otis, or me in our conversation, make sure to share this episode with someone else so they can learn it too. This episode is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. The transition from college to that first career is a difficult one, and it's even harder when you lose your sense of identity. If you're an athlete who just hung up the cleats, it's hard to go from being a rugby player to being Joe in accounting. We created Next is Best to help retired college athletes use their skills to create an impact through entrepreneurship. Next is Best by Know Your Tribe will help to smoothen that rough transition by helping you establish a clear sense of purpose, an actionable path to success, and the tools you need to manage your life. Your 20s are a confusing and chaotic time. Next is Best gives you the tools that you need to make sense of the chaos and make this next chapter of your life the best one yet. You can learn more about Next is Best by Know Your Tribe at findyourpurpose.coach. And now, here's Cam and Otis with the show.
Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Man, you know what, Cam? I think we're going to have to start warning guests. Watch what you say and do right as we're walking out of the green room, because I'm gonna call Rob out. Those of you watching on video, good-looking guy wearing his A-10 shirt. We were talking about that, but I'm gonna make fun of my new Air Force veteran buddy, sort of veteran. We're gonna talk about that too. But he did the la la la. He didn't do that, but he did the neck limber up right before we went on camera, which I just gotta say, yep. All right, everybody do your stretches before we get on and start talking.
Well,
Rob, how you doing, man?
He's such a pro too because he timed that in the 5-second countdown. He was straight faced when the cameras came on. Love it.
How you doing, Rob?
Well, good. Like any good actor or performer, you got to be in the right zone. And us Air Force guys, prima donnas, of course, that we prepared.
That's right. That's probably some very special coffee that you're drinking that was freshly ground to just the right amount. And now, Rob, all joking aside, man, what I want to dive into first is that blend between being a reservist / veteran / entrepreneur / marketing dude. I mean, if you, and don't forget doctor, PhD. Yes. If we put all of your things in behind your name, it would be a novel. It'd be like War and Peace, that long. So tell us how you're blending all those things together.
Okay.
Very, very wide open question to kick us off this morning, huh?
Yeah. It's like Forrest Gump with half the charm, is the way I look at it. So, basically had kind of a rough start. I grew up in a logging town, pretty bad family, a lot of drugs, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of visits to jail, to go see family members, all that stuff. And I failed out of high school. I had pretty bad ADD, and back then I'm kind of a dinosaur, so they didn't have drugs back then. They didn't have like therapists and coping methods and techniques for just, hey, that kid's wild, let's separate him and let's put him in class with the special kids. It was that's how they handled stuff like that back then. So anyway, failed out of high school. I failed out of 2 colleges. I just couldn't focus in the classroom. I had immense problems just sitting still and listening to somebody talk for an hour. I get to by 19, I'm sleeping on the floor. I can't afford meat. Like I'm a level of poor that I hope nobody ever has to go through. And I took the ASVAB. I'd gone to DeVry, that distinguished school of electronic learning, and I crushed.
By the way,
the
folks,
ASVAB.
Rob, ASVAB is the skill score, kind of the. Well, I was going to say GT, but that doesn't help either. I'm trying to think of a good way for our listeners to understand what the
Is that
ASVAB
that the
is.
test y'all used to take where it tells you you're going to be a plumber or whatever? Is that one?
Armed Services
Kinda.
Vocational
Okay.
Aptitude Battery. And so
Thank
it's got
you.
a section for mechanical, it's got a section for electronic, it's got a section for admin, which I crushed. I was really bad at mechanical because I don't know anything about cars. Did well at electronics, and then it's got like an overall score. And so they do this aggregate score, and then what the ASVAB does is it tells you what jobs you qualify for. And if you get really high, you get the better electronics jobs, you get offered Intel, you get the fancier jobs. And if you get really low, you're going to be in the kitchen, or you're going to be a cop, or you're going to be like a crew chief. And you can tell the complexity of jobs in the military by the length of time. And so a crew chief has like 2 weeks of school. My school as a B-52 guy, when I joined the Air Force, was, I think, 9 months, and it was 2 schools. It was a lot of training because there's pretty much almost every electronic system on the B-52. And so I almost failed out of that too. School is not my friend at that time. So because I had structure once I joined, I was able to finish college. That's all I did. I went to college. I did a lot of volunteer work just to kind of like see something different. So MDA camps, muscular dystrophy, and Shriners. And then I worked a job also. Like I did loss prevention at Sears, I think. And so my active duty time, go ahead.
Well, I want to grab onto something because I think this is really important. You mentioned, and for you, living it, you may not have caught how important it was to you, but I think reflecting back on it, you do, is the structure that the military gave you. And that, because I've seen this with a lot of other guys and gals that I've worked with and over the years, both as a rugby coach and what I'm doing now. But I want to just hear your thoughts on that structure and how that enabled you to go from failing out of high school, failing out of college, to now you've got structure and it's enabled you to succeed.
When you don't have to worry about procuring food and you have a schedule and you know what every day is going to be like, that's what really was lacking from my life, and the discipline to get stuff done. And so once I got kind of situated in my workshop, I started thinking, okay, how can I better my life? What's the next climb? And I started I guess that was the early seeds of self-improvement. I finished college in my first enlistment. I applied to OTS to be an officer. I applied to the FBI. Both times, believe it or not, guys, my math scores tanked me. And it was a good lesson because it shows that governmental agencies put way too much effort into and way too much preference into Algebra 2 and pre-calc because they figure this is the rationale. They figure that people that can do that are highly analytical and sought after because they make good decisions. But here's that's the fallacy with that thought is that it doesn't measure morality. It doesn't measure critical thinking, really. It doesn't measure decision making. It just shows that you can memorize how equations work and kind of come up with a logical solution. And so this comes into play later. So anyway, math scores tanked me. I get out. I moved to San Diego. Now it's 2002. I go to a friend's couch, and my first glamorous job out of the Air Force as a bomber technician. I've got a secret clearance. I've got a bachelor's degree. Like I should be just working for some defense contractor and making tons of money and living the life. Tow truck driver. Nobody would hire me. I didn't know how to apply or this is the early days of the computer still. And so I just had no idea what to do. And career transition was a joke. And so this is also something near and dear to my heart. So I towed trucks for 3 months. It was the most miserable, challenging job I ever had. Everybody I worked with was fresh out of prison. And it was backbreaking, 12 hours a day work, just driving all over San Diego. And you were either taking somebody's car or you were rescuing somebody from the rain. So it was like being a cop. They either hated you or they loved you when they saw you. After that, I kind of lucked into a teaching job. So believe it or not, I became a high school teacher. ROP hired me, and we had this really awkward interview, and they were looking over all my stuff, and they figured I was some hotshot of the Air Force. And I remember in the interview, they said, we have an opening for an engineering teacher. You were a bomber guy. That's like engineering, right? And I was like, oh yeah, totally. We did engineering every day on the bombers and blah blah blah. Otis and Cam, you're talking about a guy who had never finished pre-algebra, right? I did take business math because I failed pre-algebra like 3 times. And so engineering is very heavily math-based. It's trig, it's pre-cal, it's physics, it's a combination of everything. So the first 2 years, I was completely out of my element, but I'm a very fast reader. And so I read the material. I went to a lot of teacher meetings. I kind of figured it out. So teach high school for 5 years. By the end of the 5th year, I'm up for an award. I'm teaching at Academy of Engineering. Like I've actually, kind of gotten my groove. And then they just fired all the elective teachers because of budgeting. One year, like. So it's just like, hey, Rob, you don't have a job next September. Sorry. And I'm like, well, okay, what do I do now? So the final year that I was teaching, I think, I had joined the reserves. So I came back into service. I think it was 29. I came back into service as an E4. I had done grad school in this time because that's also the first thing I did. And so I had an MBA in hand. And so that final year, I was starting off in the reserves. I'd finished my MBA, and then I'd started a doctorate program like at 30, 29 or 30 is when I started. And I said, and this before I knew I was going to get fired. And I said, okay, how do I inspire my kids to do their schoolwork by going to school and putting myself forward so I can like show them like, hey, learning never stops, blah, blah, blah. That was an interesting time because it was transitional. I started dabbling in entrepreneurship. I think I'd written a book by then, just kind of taught myself self-publishing. I'm also an 8-time author. And so I started once I learned how to self-publish books, I just went crazy. And so I started writing books on everything, charter schools and tech jobs and all kinds of stuff. My latest book's on speed learning. And then I ended up kind of falling into a college teaching job for about a year. I taught entrepreneurship, and then I flat out went full entrepreneur, and I founded a magazine, Shift Advanced Life Design. Going on next month will be 6 years, and so I also taught myself how to make a magazine. So everything centers around learning or writing.
There's a really interesting dichotomy there. I think I'm using that word right. It's early in the morning, but that you're having these different struggles with the education side, but then that also was very much like your path forward. The obstacle is the way type of a thing. What was it? The difference of being on the other end of the structure that kind of gave you that confidence to be working in there and to make those strides, in your own personal development? Or do you think it was, because you said this about the structure of the military, that it was I had food and I knew what I was doing the next day? Do you think it was that kind of a structure that gave you what you needed to keep moving on it? Because when you talk about your high school career and then becoming a teacher, it's like, okay, so were you just, feeding the kids the answers and that kind of stuff because you didn't know how to teach it? That's almost what you would think, but then you went the full opposite direction. It's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense to me. And the biggest thing was I read a book in my early 30s that completely changed my life. It's called Successful Intelligence. And basically it showed me that, hey, Rob, you're not stupid. I've been called stupid my entire life. Like every job I've ever had, a lot of military vets, whatever, because I'm a creative. And what this book taught me, it taught about the 3 learning styles, which are creative, analytical, practical. And so your creatives are the people that make stuff like podcasts, or they make web design, or they write books or whatever. They always have really creative ideas. Your analyticals are your pilots, engineers, scientists, like real serious types that, hey, there's only one solution to every single problem, and really good at math, but everything's very rigid and structured, right? You're pretty much your officers. And then practical.
Whoa, time out. Come on, man. I ain't even called out that stuff, and you got to throw that out me? Come on.
You got to work for more pilots.
You tried to slip it in, too. Did you hear that? Yeah? Okay. All right. I guess I deserve that, though, after calling out your neck stretches.
Now we're even.
Yeah, all right.
But once I read that book, it really showed me the value of just the way that my brain was wired and the characteristics, because it fit like a glove. It was like, oh my God, no wonder I've had trouble trying to fit in this analytical world taking all these standardized tests and trying to join the FBI and officer school and all these bureaucratic institutions, when really the solution was right in front of my face the whole time. It's to go into business for myself, be my own boss, and just let my creative energy go insane. And that's when I started to get success, because anytime I've been in a cubicle, I feel like I want to just kill myself. Like I can't stand like dealing with team meetings and just being told what to do. And hey, this is when you can go to lunch. This is when you can go to the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that I'm lazy. It's just that I see inefficiencies in a lot of companies that I've worked for. Most people have given up on any hope of dreams, like any creative ideas are completely stifled, and everyone just wants to work their 30 years, get their gold watch and retire and whatever. And because people seek stability, and they like structure and they don't like change, and a lot of people aren't brave enough to go out and chase their dreams. And so that's when the entrepreneur bug bit me. I read that book and I started to realize, okay, man, it is okay to be like this. Society only rewards analyticals pretty much, because that's the path that we get pushed. But being a creative is awesome in its own way. Being an entrepreneur is awesome because there's no income cap. I don't have to go into my boss's office and beg for a 2% raise every year. I can just work a little harder or a little smarter and make as much money as I want. And that's the value of entrepreneurship, is once you start to work on your money mindset. And we had a talk off camera about how to monetize podcasts, for example. And so you just have to find the right people that understand processes, and that's how you grow. And so that's how I evolved into what my life is today.
Do you think that was do you think it was an understanding like of this is the way my brain works, and so now I can move forward with it? Or do you think it was more so the confidence that it was like, oh, I'm not lazy, I'm not stupid, I'm like, which camp do you think it falls into? Because with a lot of the mental health things with like ADD, Dad, we talked about on the show, the shadow spectrums, that everyone's on the spectrum there somewhere for like so many different things, and so much of it is just knowing what you're dealing with and that it's a normal thing for people out there. Like, was it that, or is it more so it's like, hey, I can do this? Which one was the answer there for you, I guess?
Believe it or not, it was acceptance. So it was more a sigh of relief, saying, wow, you're really not stupid. You're just wildly creative, and you're wildly talented in your own field, in the things that you can imagine. And a lot of people that are very successful today, we're now seeing the rise of creatives. We're now seeing the Joe Rogans and the Elon Musks and the Sir Richard Branson, and just these crazy people who, crazy, subjective, but who just kind of do their own thing, and they don't, Joe Rogan, if you read about his early days, he was like a limo driver, and he was a tournament winning martial arts instructor when he was like 17. I think he failed out of high school. Like he was just like me. He was a kinesthetic learner. He learned by doing. He wasn't built for the classroom, and he was just always in creative endeavors, and he ended up migrating to TV, and now, $100 million Spotify deal. He's laughing all the way to his Porsche,
And I'm sorry, but I got to laugh at my it's not a Freudian slip. It's the word tie-in, a kinesthetic learner. I was thinking Joe's more like a kinetic learner, starting off in the MMA world, getting his head beat in. But I want to jump back to something you said earlier that I thought was really interesting also, in the cube world, which, I've been there, know what it's like. But I'm curious about this aspect of it. The cube world versus teamwork, because as an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to be out there all by yourself, and we all know you don't. Nobody makes it, nobody has success alone. So how do you come across that cube world, where it's almost misery loves company, and the teamwork of entrepreneurship, running a business and coming up with ideas and solutions that, generate revenue?
Yeah, it's you never want to be a solopreneur, and you want to build your team. I've read a bit about the Q world and Pineland and a few terms, and you definitely, there's something to be said for specialists, the importance of specialists. And you got in the Q world, it's commo, weapons, engineering, and help me out. What's the fourth one?
Oh, you're
Sport
talking
discipline.
Q world as in Q course. I was talking cube as in
Oh,
cube world.
gotcha.
We could talk about SF stuff all day long, but that's too easy for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll go back to teamwork, but I would definitely like to have that chat too a little
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, we'll circle back.
So as far as teamwork goes, it's very important to hire experts. It's very important to pair yourself with people that are really good specialists because, and this is why you don't want to be a solopreneur. You only are so good at certain skills, and at the very beginnings of your entrepreneurial career, you will bootstrap everything, but you're like an E4 trying to do everything. And once you get a little money rolling in, you have to kind of promote yourself mentally, and you have to be an O3, and you have to bring in an assistant. You have to bring in a social media coordinator. The first two things you take off your plate are email, administrative, and your social media stuff, your outbound social media stuff. And you start to focus on tightening up your systems. But specialists will save you time. They will do the job better, and you'll get more bang for your buck. I mean, when somebody hires me, they have no idea how to write a press release. They have no idea how to host one. They have no idea how to reach out to reporters. And I've mastered this stuff. I've gotten somebody on CBS in a day from a single email. And so it's just these little things that make the job easier as an entrepreneur. So start to isolate what you're really good at, what you enjoy doing, and then the stuff you can't stand, just hire somebody. That's it.
One thing you mentioned earlier was the speed learning aspect of it. I'm curious, did you ever have issues with you bring on the specialist and you like almost like the nerding out of like I could learn how to do that, or like wanting to dive into some new area, and like you can recognize that it's not the efficient route, but then there's that speed learner and you was like I could figure out coding this weekend.
The prime example is the cover of my magazine. So I hire a guy, I pay him a good amount because he's awesome at design. First of all, he's got the really creative like design side of him. Every cover is a freaking masterpiece these days. But I will pay that money, and he's Air Force, so he's clearly talented. And so, gotta throw that in. But in the early days, I was doing my own covers, and they were abysmal. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, this looks like a seventh grader did this. Just primary colors and conflicting, just slapping a photo in the middle of like a blue screen. I'm just like, Jesus, what was wrong with you, Rob? And so I brought this guy in, and for 5.5 years, he's done my covers because he has better software than I do. He's been through classes, so he's actually got like structure. And then his creative eye is incredible. He has access to, he can do way better design elements. Could I learn this from the speed learning perspective? Yes. Do I want to put the time in? No. It would take me weeks, if not months, to get to his level, and I don't want to. I'd rather just throw him a couple $100 and then focus on like what my zone of genius is, which is writing, which is getting the story, talking to people. And so I can outsource that. You have to figure out, can I do this at a B+ or better level? And if not, then should I hire it out? Should I bring somebody in? And yes, you should absolutely have some skill. I've taught myself how to create a magazine. I've taught myself how to self-publish. I've taught myself the press release process. I had to read 5 books to learn that, and then like go online, do research, because a press release, everyone thinks it's just like an article, and it's not. There's actually formatting. It's very, very specific. There's word counts, and there's 6 elements to a press release, and people don't. This isn't like day-to-day, everyday knowledge that people know how.
Right.
And so, some things I did want to speed learn, and some things I just pay out. And everybody needs to have that self-examination and look at the process and like, hey, what am I wasting time on that I hate doing? We'll hire somebody for it. That's it.
And it's more than just self-examination. To put it in the business sense, it's how much is your time worth? And that's the way I like to talk to people about it is, if you could and you mentioned email, that's a great one, or scheduling, or, if you could pay somebody $20 an hour to handle 10 hours worth of stuff a week, what could you do with your time, which is, I'd like to think, is at least $100 an hour. So do a quick little math on the ROI on that, and you're thinking about, well, how back to what you said earlier as an entrepreneur, growing my business, right? If I want to make more money, then I can work harder in my business, work harder on my business, in that sense, which is the more correct way of saying it, and grow that way. So yeah, I think that's a great thing, and truthfully, it takes some great self-awareness and self-analysis. We talked with Lisa Rosenthal with her $80 million company, Camden,
Yes, sir.
I think,
Yep.
and how she's doing the self-analysis of herself and her current executive team on whether or not are they the right team that can take us to 150 million, or to include herself in that sense. Now, that's a tough thing to do, those self-reflections. How did you do that for your personal sense in this? I mean, we talked very specifically about the cover of a magazine, which is your magazine, Shift. Dang it, I just lost it. Shift magazine, right? Sorry to mess up the title there. Shift magazine, but it's a very specific thing. How did you, looking back, reflecting on yourself, see those other elements? Because you mentioned you threw out email as an example. See those other elements where you shouldn't be doing it, and you should be paying somebody else to do it for you.
The time to give the listeners and viewers an example, because everyone always asks, when should I delegate?
Mm-hmm.
You need to prove the system first, and you need to have some money coming in. And when you get to about, I break down businesses in a tier system based on income. So tier 3 is $0 to $5,000. When you get to about $5,000 a month, you have enough revenue to where you can hire somebody. That's about when you bring in your next person. And then you promote yourself. Like I said, you go from the E4 level to the O3. The O3 means you are now running specialists. And you need 2 or 3. And if you have to, start off with people from Fiverr or from the Philippines or from India or whatever you need to do in order to get the proper process. Fire people as you need to until you find that right person with the right energy, with the right dependability, and the right skill set. Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week obviously is the Bible of entrepreneurship, but he says to just fire people and don't have any hesitation about it. Don't put feelings into it. It's business. You're just creating the most effective business model possible. And then when you get to, you're in tier 2, you got this revenue coming in, you got your people under you, your processes should be better. You start to add income streams. You start to sell more expensive stuff. You start to do, the media and branding upgrade for the podcast, or you start offering consulting on the side and use the podcast as the entryway. But once you bring in these extra income streams and you finally hit tier 1, which is $10,000 a month, now you're at the point where you're pretty much the 07, and you are the only people you're talking to are your managers. You're talking to your ops managers. You're talking to your O3s, your captains. You're not talking to the people on the lowest end of the ladder. And I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to them, but I'm just saying the communication isn't as direct. They should not be able to walk into your office as an 07 and hey, how's it going? Let's have some coffee, General. But people need to understand growth, scale. They need to understand when it's time to bring on additional team members, and they need to really, this is how to do this. I mean, this is the magical question, is how do I grow? How do I scale? You need to understand income generating activities. Mm-hmm. And this is where I really had the light bulb, because I started off selling, one of the early things I was selling was $47 ebooks. And at that tiny level of money, you either have to have a giant audience that is connected and will buy from you, or you have to look at your pricing. And these days I sell consulting calls for $750. And you're like, wow, who would pay that? Well, a person will pay that when I can map out their entire 30-day plan, what to do, what resources to use, and then follow up with them to make sure that they're on track. And so I constructed this $750 consulting call that's really a month of working with Rob. And so people that are successful understand the value of it, because I have a lot of answers for them that they just won't have intuitively. And then, so that's one way that I increased my income generating activities. And then also have a recurring revenue stream. So for example, you guys have this great podcast. You should be doing 3-month ad packages. So it would be very nice to have some money coming in every single month for 3 months solid, because you've inked these contracts with people. So recurring revenue is amazing. There's a lot of ways to do it. It's membership or subscription, but just, multiple month contracts are awesome. I just signed a coffee company to be my sponsor. They pay me every month. They give me free coffee. But these are the things that we can do to grow our businesses. And then here's a tip, and this is a lot of veterans need to hear this. You need a high roller package, in the sense that somebody is going to show up. Joe Moneybags is going to show up and say, hey, I want to drive the Lamborghini. What do you have? And if I asked most veterans, do you have a $10,000 package? Do you have a $15,000 package? I don't care if you're service-based or goods-based or whatever. Do you have a package at that level for Joe Moneybags? Are you ready when he does show up? Because trust me, Joe Moneybags has shown up in my life at least 5 times. And sometimes I've been ready and sometimes I have not. Joe Moneybags will pay you five figures in a day, which is a great day, but you have to have that package ready. Right? So just something to think about. Have it on the background. And the secret, because a lot of people get weird when a lot of zeros come into play, the secret is multi-month contracts. So if you can't justify in your own brain, writing a $12,000 contract, write it out over 3 months, write it out over 6 months. If you're goods-based, have a subscription where you're sending them some really expensive shit or something branded with their name on it, or, have something to where it's worth that investment. But have it ready, because most people and veterans, God bless them, veterans price to the level of their money mindset and their level of comfort with money. And a lot of veterans join the service and we don't have great backgrounds. So if we walk into the service with a undeveloped money mindset, or we didn't have a lot of money growing up, we're going to get out, we're going to create these amazing businesses, but we're going to price everything under $100 because it's what we can afford. And this is another thing, and I'm telling you right now, I taught this one sentence to a guy, a coach, who's been on the cover of Shift, and he told me it made him $40,000 in a month. And I told him, stop pricing at what you can afford.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cam and Otis Show. If you're enjoying this conversation, then make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your life. Stay up to date with the show on Facebook and Instagram at Cam and Otis Show, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you're the first to hear about new episodes and other special content. Now let's get back to the show.
Oh yeah, I love that, because you sit there and go, if you put yourself in the box that you're in right now, like financially, guess who you're going to target? The people that are financially just like you, right? So if you only got $100 in the bank, and you look at what you're selling, and it's like, dang man, I couldn't afford this, so there must not. I better only price this at $25. Because eventually they'll make money off of it, and you just sell yourself short. From the background that you came from, how did you flip that switch for yourself? Did somebody hit you with a 2x4? Did you trip and fall down the stairs? Where was that where you were able to say, all right, I don't have to live off of ramen every other day because I can't afford ramen even every day. And now I can charge this because this is the true value of who I am and what I do and what I provide. How did that switch come for you?
So it was a couple things. I had to work on myself in a lot of ways, because entrepreneurship is up and down. And 2 times I've hit $20,000 in a month, which was amazing. But to answer your question real specifically, people have to work on their own self-perception of wealth and what it really means. I'm not talking money or income. I'm talking wealth. Wealth is your relationships, it's your experiences, it's your connections, it's your balance. You know, I know a lot of guys that are seven figures and they're miserable and their families hate them, you know, and they're unhealthy, but because all they do is chase money for years and years. Mm-hmm. And the kids never see them. The wife is like really cold towards them. You know, they're never home. They're always on the laptop or out and about or at the construction site or whatever. That's not wealth, right? You can bring in a lot of money. If you want to bring in a lot of money, go be a fucking investment banker. You know, go do something that you know, just soulless, doesn't create any impact. But real wealth is working on yourself, living a wealthy lifestyle in a sense that is balance and impact. Okay. And that's when you start to attract and when you better yourself. And so what I did, and I'm speaking in generalities, now I'm going to go specific. What I did, I started befriending people that were immensely wealthy and creating value for them and just having conversations with them. If I were to get a piece of paper out right now, I probably have 10 people I could call on right now. They're seven figures or more. And the conversations I have with them are mind blowing. And for me personally, what I started to do more high-end activities. I don't hang out in bowling alleys. I don't hang out in pool halls. You know, nothing against that. If you want to do that, that's cool.
Hold on. I mean, there's nothing against those places.
Yeah, and they're fun ones in a while. Don't get me wrong, but it's not my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You know, it's cool to like dip in once in a while, go play darts or whatever, have a Coors Light. But I started going to higher end activities. Started going to like high end business networking groups where you have to wear like a suit. You know, I started dressing nicer. I started like following the Stephen Kuhn example and wearing pocket squares and nice watches and like really getting into, okay, what does highly successful Dr. Garcia look like versus Rob, who usually dresses like Larry the Cable Guy and freaking plays Xbox all day long and is just, you know, fat, dumb, happy. And I started to really look into, okay, how can I be more like Marshall Terran? How can I be more like Kuhn? How can I be more like Jillian Sandoval? Just all these people who live this lifestyle naturally, right? It's not like a Halloween costume they just put on once in a while. And so I started to really think about the way that I'm presenting myself. I worked on the branding. I worked on the graphics and the social media. So if you guys look at my Facebook, every post I do has a purpose. It's aesthetically augmented, so it's not just me slapping up a picture of, you know, washing my dishes or something. Mm-hmm. I use filters. I make sure that my posts are pleasing to read. They're interesting. They're formatted. I put more time into who I am so that I can attract higher end people. The other night, my friend Karen and I, there was some free party downtown for some huge realty group. I didn't know any of them, but it was open to the public. It was at the pier in San Diego. It was a ridiculous event. And Karen and I dressed super nice. Oh, I met the CEO in 5 minutes, and we're in talks because he likes what I do. And so that could be, you know, a source of press releases. That could be a source of magazine articles, whatever. But I started making more friends with higher end people because this is another good lesson for veterans. Regardless of how you perceive yourself, if your skill set's strong in whatever field you're in, you have a tremendous amount of value to those high end people. You just have to find the gatekeepers. You just have to break in the doors. You have to talk to them. And we've now gone from this transitional point to where now you can pitch that $10,000 offer. You can pitch that $15,000 offer. And if you want more zeros, stop working with first-year businesses and start looking at established companies that have more money than time. Start working with doctors. Start working with land developers. Start working with you know, high-end real estate companies because they will throw money at you for basic services. I've had people write me big checks because they don't want to mess with anything I do. And this goes back to being a specialist. Mm-hmm. And my results, that's the next thing you have to figure out. The next lesson is work on your results. If you have screenshots, you have client testimonials, you have like all these amazing results you've gotten for people, and you can replicate them pretty, you know, accurately over time, you'll get those sales. You'll get those high-end people. But that's one thing I've also had to do is learn, okay, what works, what doesn't. And I've gotten better at my job. I've gotten better at communicating. I know if I write you guys a press release, it's going to hit almost every major affiliate. It's going to be on Fox, CBS, ABC. It's going to get hung on all these sites. I know about how many people will view it. But just all these things, you learn cause and effect over time.
One, that reminds me so much of, I think my favorite, and I'd like to put out the classic rock wisdom every now and then. And my favorite is always with Leonard Skinner when they first got started, and it was learn while you earn. And they didn't know how to play yet, but they just kept playing and just kept trying to get gigs and going. But the thing that you get into with that is that imposter syndrome. Did you go through that at all, Rob? And how did you shed that while you're making that transition?
Man, that's such a good question. Yeah, I deal with it and I counsel people on it because when you're an entrepreneur, you've invented your own world. The creative endeavors we do is literally some Doctor Strange shit where we make up our own timeline and we make up our own reality. So of course, because we're not sociopaths, we're gonna question ourselves and we're gonna say, okay, am I really this person? And so the way to deal with imposter syndrome, if you ever have doubts about should you be in this industry, whatever industry it is to create a result in that industry. If I'm doubting, hey, am I good enough to be a visibility strategist and using PR and all this stuff? And I think back and I'm like, oh, wow. I got Mark Gablowski on TV. I got Sandra Blackie on TV. I got Kurt Balish enough orders to where he was able to actually expand his wood shop. He had to buy a bigger facility because I got him on like some media stuff. And so
by the way, I want to shout out to Kurt. He does amazing work for those of you. Kurt Balish, check him out. Yes.
BalishWoodworks.com. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But early stage when I first met Kurt, I heard his story. I pitched him to Fayetteville Observer. We got him in. They did this huge story. He got a giant batch of orders. And so that result showed me, it's like, okay, if I can do that, what can I do for the next person? And so I just released the issue of Shift this last Friday. Ted Fox, Marine, that does like custom car work in Texas. He wrote me that day and he said, Rob, my website views doubled. Thank you. And he sent me a screenshot and I was like, holy shit. Because, when you get through the magazine, different things happen. And I've never had somebody actually send me the analytics and he's excited about it. And now we're going to take it to this next level. I'm going to start pitching car magazines. I'm going to start getting him on the news. I'm going to start doing all this visibility stuff. But the point is, if I can create these results for people, I'm not an imposter. Mm-hmm. And everybody needs to work on, okay, if I'm having doubts, act in your capacity, act in your industry, go do some shit involved in your industry and create a result, and you'll never doubt yourself again.
And I'll add on to that because I'm right there with everybody else, and say Otis ain't no different. I'll doubt and question it, but then when I get a note back from somebody or a review or our Monday Moments newsletter, somebody sends back and says something as simple as good read, it's like holy crap. All right. I guess I will. Somebody, one person, and you know what? Folks out there, if you make a difference in one person's life, that's success. So think about it that way. We don't have to have 10 million people pushing back to us and saying, "Oh, great job, patting you on the back and how wonderful you are." Because, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now because I feel negative. I feel the negative vibes pulling me on that one. But that aspect of another human being saying thank you is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And if you don't take that, and Camden and I have talked about this a couple of times on the show and various other things, is that the ability to take a compliment.
Yeah.
Because if you can't take a compliment, then guess what you're dealing with? Imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I'll just throw that out there right now, folks. Somebody says good job, somebody says thank you, and you can't, and you go, well, I don't really deserve. That's imposter syndrome, beating you up and holding you back. So, sorry, back off my coaching soapbox and back to co-host mode. I want to know, one of the things we touched on Solarpreneur, we outsourced scaling. How do you take that next leap, Rob? Where and specifically, where are you going next leap, Dr. Garcia, in that growth and scaling of business?
So the first thing that people need to really think about and scale is to not have a poverty business model. And so you can ask yourself, okay, what's a poverty business model look like? It means that you sell low cost items. It means that you have inefficient processes. It means that you treat your business like a hobby. You just pop in when it's convenient, when you want to, versus having an income goal, versus what are the income streams I can add to my business. Okay, so right now I have about 9 income streams, maybe 11, and some of them happen every single month, and it's great. I haven't had a boss in 6 years, but all of this came from developing about mid-priced services for people, and then when people want to work with me one-on-one, and if you're, this is mostly for service-based. If you're service-based, you want to, the closer you get, the more you should charge. So if somebody wants to just do a strategy call, that's $750. If somebody wants to join one of my groups and learn from me, every single week, it's like $97 a month, which is a great alternative. If somebody wants one-on-one for a month, it's $5,600. And you're like, damn, that's a lot. What is that really worth it? Well, let's see. You get calls to me every week. You get a plan for your business and a review. I'll tell you what's good, what's bad. I'll shoot you straight. You're going to get like for that package, they're going to get magazine coverage, radio interviews. They're going to get a big feature in Shift magazine. I'm going to shout them out. I have a rolling scroll. When I do Facebook Lives, they're going to appear on that. It's all this different stuff. It's Insta fame pretty much. And so the point is, a lot of people are pricing way too low, and a lot of people have not thought, okay, if I keep going like this, is my life ever going to change, or is it going to be the same? A lot of people are scared of growth and scared of scaling. They're terrified to charge something that's $5,000, and they need to start thinking differently and expanding their mind and being like, okay, I can pay my bills. Things are cool. Wife's happy. I can take the kids out once in a while. But they really need to start thinking creatively and thinking, okay, what's it going to take to get this business to 6 figures plus? What's it going to take to get this business so successful that I can buy a house? Mm-hmm. What's it going to take to get this business to the 7-figure level to where I can sell it off to somebody and then, go buy an island, whatever. But a lot of people don't dream big enough, mm-hmm. and they get very comfortable. They get very complacent, and they need to push themselves a little harder in the early years, and they need to have more conversations with people that have made it, like high-end people. And they also need to work on their discipline, Otis, in the sense that when I had the hardest time of my life clearly was getting my doctorate, living in a tiny studio apartment, and just having almost no money for years. My doctorate took 6.5 years, and I was miserable, and I was doing the reserves. It was just, it was a very hard part of my life. And the first thing I did, I printed out the Ranger Creed, and I started running at the beach at like 5 a.m, in the dark, in the rain, just the most miserable shit I could find, because it built up mental toughness. Mm-hmm. And people need to find out whatever their thing is that's going to motivate them in order to get themselves far past the average person. That's the whole purpose of Special Forces, is to weed out and to take people to a level to where only the guys that really, really want it mm-hmm. are gonna and can perform constantly. That's the 2 hallmarks as a non-SF guy. And Otis, you can agree or disagree or correct me, but that's what really helped me, was creating mental toughness and self-discipline.
And I think you might have walked into the wrong recruiter station, is what I'm hearing there, Rob. I don't know.
You got math test at Q course, Dad?
Yeah. No. Well, yes, there is, and I'll give you the answer. P for plenty. Just remember that, folks. When you get to the explosives part of your math quiz, the answer is always P. More. So. Yeah, that's great stuff, Rob, and yeah, man, I'm sitting here. Thanks for getting my mind trying to remember the Ranger Creed. It has been a couple of days since I've said it out loud, so I won't even try to say it and embarrass myself. at this point, folks, you could probably just look it up and understand why that's important. Because one of the things I do remember, and I'll go to my grave remembering this, is that you will carry on to the Ranger objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. If that doesn't get you fired up in the morning, whether you're out running in the rain on the beach, in the suck, in the cold, or just having a nice cup of coffee and saying that's a great way, great mantra to live your life, man. And yeah, thanks for that reminder, Rob. It has been a long time. Now I got to pull it out and probably add that to my list of reviewed things like the Invictus poem and Miyamoto Musashi's 5 Rings. Yeah, Ranger Creed's right up there, folks. It really is. If you don't,
100% and then some.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And man, for me, my what did I learn?
Sorry, Dad. I want to throw it back because I made the note to come back to this, and we were on SF. I thought you were going to take the jumping point. Going back to what we were talking earlier, the misunderstanding of talking the Q world and the SF world. And Rob, if you remember your point, I wanted to give you the chance to go back on that.
Just my point on that was just the importance of knowing your team and building your team. And I remembered the fourth one I was trying to struggle for. It's medic. I did a lot of reading. I probably had 15 or 20 books on special forces. I still do. I study all of them. I've interviewed for Shift Magazine, SEAL Team 6, Delta Force. And I really, it's not that I ever want to be one of these badass guys. I admire them greatly. I'm a little too mellow for that kind of lifestyle. But it's good to just understand unyielding desire to win, unwaverable, like unbreakable will. It's what keeps Navy SEALs going, in the middle of the night, a bunch of them on a boat just paddling and they're hallucinating because it's the end result. But the point is that I studied the mindset of all these guys and I interviewed them because I wanted to just take a little bit. I wanted to take that 5% and just make myself better. And I did a lot of beach runs, and I was doing like 8-milers and then jumping in the ocean at the end. And the only people I see at San Diego at 4 a.m. when it's really dark are either BUDS candidates that are like pre-BUDS about to go to Navy SEAL training, or boxers, because nobody's dumb enough to be out in weather like that. And so it just makes me feel good. It's like, okay, you are a certain class of person, too dumb to quit, that's out there because you believe in yourself and you're disciplined enough to do this. Feel good about this.
No, and that is great. And that pushing yourself in all aspects, if you can do it in one area, physical routine, and push yourself, you can do it anywhere else. And that's a great life lesson right there. Just pushing yourself through that aspect, because it carries on everywhere else. Yeah, and I'm going to go back to what I was going to say, which was what I learned. But no, good. Thank you for bringing that back up, because you know me, Camden. I'm ready to move on. So, but really,
so what'd you learn?
What I did learn was I love the quantified aspect of these things. You can go learn and teach yourself some other thing, whether it's coding, marketing, whatever, but you quantified it, and I think that's a great way of looking at it. If you can't do a B+ or better, in a short, in a finite period of time, you
reasonable,
probably ought to find somebody to do it for you. And I think that is such a great, the reason I like that so much, because it's truthfully, it's quantifiable, right? I mean, you're still the one judging it, but that's a good quantification. If you can't do that, whatever that thing is, at a B+ or better, you ought to find an expert who can do it at an A+ level and save you some time and spend just a little bit of money to make it better and develop a better product. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, when we were talking about imposter syndrome, Rob, you said as an entrepreneur, you like invent your own world, and I think that's such an interesting way of looking at it. Our reality is just a projection of everything that we see, and as an entrepreneur, the creative, you're telling that crazy story to yourself all the time to keep yourself moving, keep that motivation high, and it was so eye-opening. I'm just like, gosh, you're telling yourself this crazy story about how you're going to be a billionaire in 10 years because you're going to do X, Y, Z, and then do A, B, C, and then all these. Like, of course, every now and then some voice is going to come and be like, hey, maybe that's not quite how the story goes. But that's okay. And that's just natural of if you're building this whole world around you, of course, that doubt's going to creep in. And then little bonus one of what you were saying of count your wins when you're in that situation, how important counting your wins is when you are in that imposter syndrome, because that'll break you out of it. So that's what I learned.
Awesome. Rob, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I mean, I learned a lot, and what's really interesting, okay, this is what I learned, is I think a lot of people could learn from you guys in the art of asking questions, and in the sense of asking good, deep questions, because I've been interviewed, this is probably my 214th interview, and I remember the ones that had the interesting questions, because you guys focus, and I like the back and forth, because Otis brings certain types of questions, Cam brings certain types of questions. Some of them are personal, some of them are philosophy based, some of them are straight up, what was your military time like? Mm-hmm. But when you're interviewing people, you need to have questions that are out of the ordinary. And what I learned today is the importance of not asking generic questions, like what'd you have for breakfast today, or what kind of shoes are your favorite, or something stupid like that. And that's what I try for when I do Shift Magazine. I interview people. I ask questions that have them demonstrate expertise. Mm-hmm. I have them demonstrate their skill set and how they apply to stuff. And I don't ask yes or no questions. I ask questions that get them talking about their favorite subject. And then I ask questions that get a little deeper. So there's an art to interviewing. And what I learned today is to really look at the way you guys are asking questions and look at the way that I can be more interesting as an interviewer. Because I enjoyed this tremendously. You guys have a very good family feel, and this was fun.
Awesome. Man, thanks. I appreciate that. How do folks get in touch with you, learn more, sign up for Shift Magazine, see what else you got going on?
So they can get a free lifetime subscription to Shift Magazine by going to shifttolifedesign.com. And then if they need to find me for any business stuff or have any questions, I'm on every major platform under Rob the Warrior Strategist or Rob Garcia. Facebook is probably the best way to reach me. And that's everything.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate this, your time today. It's been a lot of fun getting to learn how you went from those simple, frustrating beginnings to this great, massive success that you're living right now and sharing and helping folks. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, guys. This is fun.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Dr. Rob Garcia, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Follow the Cam and Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram. Full videos of the show are available on YouTube, and the full archive of our episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.